Robert Burns.
Old Lang Syne, meaning old long since or long ago, is the Burns poem known throughout the world, the unofficial Scottish national anthem. In the heyday of the Scots, Holyrood House was the seat of the Scottish sovereign. James VI was the last king to rule here. He wrote and spoke broad Scots, but when Queen Elizabeth I of England died, he inherited her throne and moved to London. James VI of Scotland left his palace of Holyrood House here in Edinburgh and became James I of Great Britain, the first monarch to unite the two crowns. At a stroke, the center of gravity shifted to the English-speaking south, and Scotland was gradually merged into the English mainstream. It's a turning point in our story. The separate development of the Scottish tongue had already been weakened by the southern influence. Now it was irrevocably arrested by the departure of the Scottish aristocracy.
Keep up, Peter. Keep right up.
Thirlestone is one of the most strategic castles on the high road to Edinburgh. Fought over for centuries, it's the home of Captain the Honourable Gerald Maitland Carew and his family.
Try and keep up.
They've lived in this valley for generations. Their ancestors fought for Scotland at battles like Bannockburn and Flodden Field. They're as Scottish as they could be. The Maitland history is the story of Scotland in miniature. Many of these portraits celebrate Maitlands who followed James to London.
Probably the most prominent was John Maitland, generally known as Chancellor John, who was Lord Chancellor to James I of England, James VI of Scotland. And so he would have gone south with James VI when he went to London, and was a very prominent man in history, and was created Lord Thirlestone by James I.
An early Maitland spoke Scots so broad it was said his tongue was too big for his mouth. But in time, the Maitlands affected London ways and London accents. Samuel Johnson said of the Scots that the great, the learned, the ambitious, and the vain all cultivate the English phrase.
Watch the ball. Oh, you're right.
To get on at court, the Scots needed a command of London English. Today, Maitland Carew speaks upper-class English. For all his Scots ancestry, he has no trace of a Scottish accent.
Right. Watch the ball.
After all, my ancestors have been educated in the south, and through that I would say that is why we speak Queen's English.
Are you ready? Come on, boys, it's tea time.
I love all to do with Scotland. I think it's a very rich language, and I love listening to it.
I'll have to go back to the other one.
I'm very bad at putting on accents, therefore I can't speak it.
Well done. You win.
For more than 300 years, ambitious Scots have taken lessons to lose what were once called marks of rusticity.
Oh, dear. Hi, Bertie. It's got your tea time.
Even today, the two boys will go to an English public school.
There we are.
Ever since King James moved to London, it's been English, not Scots, that had snob value among the leaders of society.
I might have a little bit of cake, please.
To strengthen the union of crowns, King James ordered that every church in Scotland should conduct its Sunday services using his newly translated Bible, the Authorized Version. Fraser Aitken, the minister in Girvan, is a true Scot. But for 350 years, he and his fellow churchmen have used the King James Bible, written in the standard Southern English of its day.
Is that neat, will it? It's fine. Okay, good. Lead off.
It is thanks to King James that Fraser Aitken will preach not in broad Scots, but in standard English with a Scottish accent.
Morning. How amiable are thy tabernacles, O Lord of hosts. My soul longeth, yea, even fainteth for the courts of the Lord. My heart and my flesh crieth out for the living God.
Since King James's day, there's been a decline in Scots. Today, it's clearly a variety of English, not a separate language. But the Scottish accent survives, and so does national pride in its distinctive music. When the New Testament in Scots was published recently, only the devil spoke London English. Occasionally, Fraser Aitken reads the lesson in the old tongue.
Our reading this morning is taken from the New Testament in Scots. I the fornicht of that same day, the first day of the week, the disciples was sitting ahent lock fast doors for dread of the Jews, when Jesus came and stood in their midst. Ane of the 12, Thomas, that was called the twin, wasn't with them when Jesus came. And when they told him that they had seen the Lord, he said to them, I say ne'er believe sic a thing. A sinnicht after him, his disciples was in by again, and Thomas was with them. When Jesus came and stayed in their midst, for all the doors was locked fast, and said, A blessing on you. Sin he said to Thomas, Rax here your finger and look at my hands, rax out your hand and stop it into my side, and binna misdooten nae mere, but believing. Thanks be to God for the gospel. Amen.
Of course, lowland Scottish English, the language of Robert Burns, spread far beyond Scotland. In 1608, King James encouraged the lowlanders to establish Scottish plantations in the north of Ireland.
For centuries, there has been a lot of comings and goings between Northern Ireland and Scotland. One of the local landmarks is a volcanic plug, and its nickname that's been given both by Irish and Scots folk is Paddy's Milestone. And from this part of Ayrshire, on a clear day, weather permitting, you can see the coast of Northern Ireland.
This is the Giant's Causeway. Here, according to legend, a Scots giant crossed the water and was challenged by an Irish giant. In the story, the Irish giant prevailed, but in 1608, the Scots-Irish, as they now became, showed no signs of going home and were soon settled in with a vengeance. King James gave huge land grants from the confiscated estates of the Irish lords, and some of the settlers achieved great prosperity. The backbone of the new Ulster colony were Scottish, small farmers living and working as they'd done for centuries in the lowlands. But it was not a peaceful settlement for long. Towns like Londonderry became walled fortresses at war with the Gaelic-speaking Irish, and the siege of Derry gave the language a new phrase, no surrender. And up on the walls of Derry, the security forces are still fighting the legacy of these historic battles. In the present troubles, many of the Ulster Protestants have Scottish forebears. As we shall see in another program, the English of their Irish